Hey there guys, I am here today talking to you about the best and worst books of 2020. So naturally this list is not entirely 100% totally correct, just because I'm filming this obviously before the new year. My final book will probably just be a bit spiteful and therefore end up on my worst or best list. But for now, these are the best and worst books. So I'm going to take you through the worst books of the year so far, just so you guys know. I think this is my definitive list. I highly doubt any of my other books are going to make it on this list, because the books I have are very, very bad. So for me, one of the worst books I read this year was Gone by Michael Grant. I have this entire series. Yes, I am planning on finishing this series. Me and Brooke are carrying on to see how we do. We've both kind of said, Brooke especially has said, we're going to read the next one together. And then if Brooke really doesn't like it, she's probably going to stop reading the series, which would be smart. Me, I also keep thinking, I've paid a lot of money for this series because I got all of the books with sprayed edges and they're really cute. So I'm like, I would love to just stop, but I'm probably going to have to get to the end to justify buying those sprayed edge books. But I didn't like it. It has very, very bad representation of autism, and I hated how that was portrayed. I also don't really like the characters. I didn't really like the story. Overall, I feel as though the story was more interesting than anything else. I want to carry on because I want to know how this story is going to go. But I did not like how it was written. It was written very, very young, but about very dark things. So it's not for children. And I did not gel with the writing style at all. Following on from that, the books were too long for me. I just really didn't enjoy the story, and it was ridiculously long and I didn't like it. And I didn't really like the characters. Plus the fact that the author did decide to write a very crappy representation of autism and then justify that in a terrible way. I am going to link a video up there from my friend Brooke, who did a full review on the problems that this author has done and the book Gone in general. I feel as though that video is going to be much more articulate than I could ever be. It could really tell you what you need to know, whereas I would just kind of ramble on and yeah. So I'm going to link Brooke's video up there. Please do check it out if you have not already, because I think it's quite important that people are aware of this going in. Because Brooke said, and I really agree with it, if there are people, especially because this is marketed towards teenagers and young adults, if there are people who are unaware of what autism is and they go into this book reading that is how autism is represented and how that is, then people can really get the wrong idea about what autism is. And that is not what we want. In addition to that, I feel as though it's also really important to say that if there is anyone reading the book who has autism, seeing that your condition is being represented in that way in a book can be really damaging, and that really concerns me as well. So please check out that video, because I think it's important that everyone kind of becomes aware of what that book series was like. A lot of people love the series. That is not a problem. I am not saying trash the series. I'm not saying don't read it. I'm not saying the author's horrible. I'm continuing on with the series. I am doing it myself. I'm just saying please be aware of how that representation was in the first book. I can't justify, or I can't give a full and accurate description of how it is in the future books, because I wouldn't know. But in the book that I read, it was not great, and I want people to be aware of that just so they know. And then if you choose to carry on the series, which I myself am doing, so I'm not putting anyone against it, at least you are very aware of the representation and how it's not actually accurate. Now for me, my fourth worst book was one I absolutely despised, and that is the book My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult. This is a story about a young girl who is dying of cancer. So her parents, because they can't find anyone to match for the organs and stem cells and things that she needs, they design a child specifically to give what the dying girl needs. I've seen the film. I was fine with it, but the The book then carries on with the girl Anna deciding that she doesn't want to be the donor anymore because her parents don't treat her like a child. They treat her as the thing they take from to give to the child they care about. And she sues her parents for the rights to her own body. And I think that was a really gripping and harrowing story. I've seen the film. I thought the film was really interesting. I thought it was very dark, but really interesting. So I was okay reading the book. I fancied it. Big mistake. The book was awful. I hated every minute of it. They changed the ending, which to be fair I was aware of going in, but I didn't realise how mad it would make me reading it. And I hated the book. I gave it a 2-star because I was being very generous. I don't even know why I gave it a 2-star. I'm literally sat here now thinking, nope, that should have been a 1. It should have been a DNF. But I carried on. Hated the book. Awful. Awful. Now, my next worst book of the year was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I have only recently read this one, and I hated it. I gave it, I think, a 2-star rating, and I thought it was just terrible. I thought the story was boring, which I kind of knew going in that it would be, but everyone always said to me, just carry on, because when you get to the twist, you will love it. I didn't like the twist. I thought the twist was actually really, really horrible. I've given a full spoiler-filled reason of why I didn't like this book and what the twist was and how much I hated it on my Goodreads, so please feel free to go and check that out. I'm not going to mention it here because if people haven't read the book, I don't want to spoil it for you. Just so you know, I did not like it, and there are some people that love it, and I understand why, but I personally hated it. And I was really, really unhappy with it. And when people say the twist is really good, when I got to it, I was so upset. I hated the twist. I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever read. Well, I didn't. But it was one of the worst things I'd ever read. And I just didn't like it. So I would recommend not giving this one a go. Yeah. Now we're up to our top 2 spots. One is a book I read ages ago, and that is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Yeah, I gave this my number 2 spot for the book I didn't like in 2020 because I just didn't get it. Everyone keeps telling me it's their favourite book ever, and I'm like, I'm so happy for you. I truly am. I'm so happy that you love this book because when I read it, I got headache. It started out with me wanting to read it and wanting to enjoy it and wanting to carry on. Then I kind of hit a point where I was just like, none of this makes sense. And I know that that's the point, but I feel as though there needs to be some sort of sense. And that's not something I enjoy. Like, for me, I feel as though I'm fine with the book not making sense as long as there is a reason things need to happen. Or there is a reason something's happening. There was no reason. It was just like, this has happened. Okay, it's done. We're going to go over here now. This is happening now. Okay, we're done. We're going to go over here. This is happening now. And I'm like, what? It just, I didn't like it. I've never liked any of the Alice in Wonderland movies, and I was hoping the book would kind of change my opinion. Did not. Really didn't like it. I'm really sad about it. And I'm deeply sorry to those people that class it as their favourite book of all time, or one of the favourites, because I really wanted to like it, and I just didn't. I'm sorry. Now we're on to our worst book of the year for me. This, I debated. I really debated. We all know that Come Again should be on this list, but no, because I actually felt Come Again was really good until the end. But the rest of the book was good, so I can't even put it on this list because I still hate it, but not as much as this one. My worst book of the year was Meddling Kids by Edgar Quintero. This story features it's kind of like a reimagining of Scooby-Doo. They were child detectives, they solved mysteries, and then as adults, they go back to a haunted house because they feel as though they have unfinished business there. And it's crap. I found it very boring to read as I went along. I enjoyed the characters, which was the main reason I carried on, but I found it very, very boring to read. And then it was crap. Utter crap. Utter terrible crap. It was literally just pointless reveal, scary but not scary moments, unnecessary detail, unnecessary writing style. I think I articulated much better why I didn't like this in my wrap up, so I will link that in the cards. So go and check that out, because I really hated it. So let's get on to a bit of more positivity, because we're a little bit negative in this house and I'm not liking it right now. So, in terms of my best books of the year, I want to give an honourable mention, because there are quite a few that I loved, and I felt bad not putting it on. So I'm going to give this an award of its own and class my favourite series of the year as the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Because I really did love that series. It was amazing. I loved every minute of it. I love the characters. I am obsessed. But it did have a few highs and lows. And when I was thinking of my favourites, there were so many books, like some in series, that just kind of didn't let me down no matter what. And whereas with the Shadowhunter books, there was a few books that were a bit less than perfect, and then there was one that was drastic. There are some books that I didn't feel let down by at all, and they made my list. So I just want to give an honourable shout out. My favourite series of the year was the Shadowhunter Chronicles, but there will be no Shadowhunter Chronicles in my top 5. In my 5th spot is actually a series, but I'm ranking it from the very first book, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I read this and Good Girl Bad Blood concurrently, and I love them both. I thought it was amazing. I love the mixed media. I love the characters. I love the mystery element. It really was truly wonderful to read, and I was so happy reading it. I gave this a 5 out of 5. I did a full dedicated review for this and the sequel, which I will link one of them up there, so go and check it out. And I loved it. It was so good. It follows Pip, who is, for one of her school courses, reinvestigating the murder of someone who went to her school, and suddenly she kind of believes that what the police say happened is not actually what happened, and she goes to uncover the truth by herself, and it just kind of unravels from there, and it's really, really good. It is such a good story, such great characters, utter perfection. I loved it. And then following on from that, the second one, which was Good Girl Bad Blood, was equally as amazing. I think I preferred book 1, but probably literally by this much. It was neck and neck. I love them. So that A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but definitely the series of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, is in my number 5 spot. Then in my number 4 spot, I'm going with a nice little thriller that I still don't own a physical copy of. I don't know why I won't just buy myself it. But that is Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. I read this, I can't remember when I read it. I read it a while ago. But I fell in love with it. It is a very dark psychological thriller about a woman whose child gets kidnapped, and she is going through all of the stages of grief when she discovers that her husband is cheating on her. Then she kind of just decides that she loves her husband, and she is not going to let his infidelity break them up, because she is determined to keep what family she has left. And it is so dark and gritty, but it's very psychological. It follows the characters in ways that a lot of other thrillers don't, and that's what I really loved about this. My friend Brooke, who I mentioned 19 times a video, so you should know who I mean by now, she read this book in a stage where she was bored of thrillers, because she found them to be quite generic and every thriller was the same, which is understandable that she was feeling that way. And she gave this book a 5-star because it was so good and so different and just perfect. And it is utterly perfect. Don't get me wrong, there are probably things that people won't like. I understand if people don't like it. But for me, it just kind of took a lot of turns I didn't expect it to go. And the suspense and the tension I was feeling just because I didn't know what was going to happen was so high, and it was perfect for me, and I was so happy, and it was great. So check that one out. Then in my number 3 spot, one of my favourite books of the year was The Library of the Unwritten by AJ Hackworth. I feel like this will not come as a surprise to a lot of people. I mention this book frequently. I love the characters in this book and their relationship. That's one of the main things I love in this series. It's not a series yet. In this book, and I can't wait to continue the series because the sequel is coming out soon, and I can't wait to carry on for these characters and for that relationship. This story follows Claire, who is a librarian in the Unwritten Wing of Hell. The Unwritten Wing is where all of the unfinished books on Earth go when they have been forgotten about by their authors. And Claire is tasked with the job of making sure that none of the characters come out of the books and go looking for their authors. Claire has an assistant, Brevity, and she is also helped by a demon courier called Leto when one of the characters escaped to Earth. It's so good. I initially gave this a 4.5 star, and I want to change it to 5, but I am going to be doing a reread of this very soon, in time for the next book coming out. So I'm just going to wait until then, because I think this is 5-star deserving. At the time I gave it a 4.5 because I feel as though things could have been done a little bit differently and it would have had more of an impact. But I haven't been able to get this book out of my head, and it was pretty much perfection, and I should have given it a 5 stars. But I love this. I will never not recommend this. If you want to give it a go, this is really good. And if you love sarcastic, comedic characters with really funny moments, this is definitely a good way to go. In my number 2 spot, I have a duology. Noah Can't Even and Noah Could Never. Of course, these books were going to make my favourites list. This is a book series I read during Alphabathon in July. Obviously, these fit the N prompt. And I just kind of picked these up on a whim. It was recommended to me by my friend Robbie from Andy's No Stuck in a Book. He suggested that I read these. Was not something I really wanted to read. I didn't own them. I didn't want to add books to my TBR. And they sounded cute and fluffy, but not something I was ever really interested in. I was wrong. I will admit it. I am obsessed. I read Noah Can't Even. I was obsessed with it. I then decided to read Noah Can't Ever 2 weeks later. Despite the fact I had 26 books to read in July, I then picked up this one as book 27 just because I loved it and I wanted to read the series and finish it off. After that, I then obviously had to get physical copies because I was so obsessed. And I've since collected pretty much every book Simon James Green has ever written because I was obsessed. This follows a young boy called Noah who is a bit socially awkward, a bit geeky, a bit dorky. And he thinks that if he can start going out with this popular girl, he will become much more liked by his peers. Then he jumps forward to a party where his best friend Harry kisses him. And Noah is then forced to question whether he has more than platonic feelings for his best friend and what that means for him going forward. Does it mean he's gay? Does it mean he's bi? Does it mean he is straight and he just loves his best friend? What does it mean? And it starts making Noah question everything he thought he knew. So, of course, that means my number 1 spot is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. There was no question that this was going to be in the list, and there was no question really that this was going to be at the top. I read this book and I fell in love with it. This was the first Adam Silvera book I read. This follows 2 young boys who find out that they are going to die on the same day, and they decide that rather than be alone, they make a friendship and spend their final day together. This story was equal parts heartwarming as it was heartbreaking. I couldn't stop loving every second of the book, and I couldn't stop crying every second of the book. It was so good, and I just can't wait to reread this. I think Rufus and Mateo are my favourite characters, and nothing will ever compare. This is my favourite book. If anyone ever wants to read one of my favourite books, I love it. This was my favourite book this year. This is potentially one of my favourite books of all time. And this is one I'm desperate for people to read. So if I was going to recommend any, it will be this one. If you have not read it yet, please do. So that is it. They are my top 5 books of the year and my bottom 5 books of the year. I had some great ones. I had some very, very shocking ones. But I want to know from you guys whether you've read any of my top or bottom list and how you feel my rating was in comparison to your view of them. So please let me know down in the comments what you thought of all of the books I've read. And that is it from me, guys. So I will see you in the next video. Make sure you give me a like, comment and subscribe. And that is it. So until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye.
SafeMusicList.com. Royalty-free music for marketing and promotional videos.